There's no excuse for, oh, I'm not going to worry about the future and I'm just going to focus on the present moment. It's like bullshit. You're going to end up dead very soon. You're going to end up in hell, literally. Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to the Strong Stoic Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Tumlin. And if you want to live a stress-free life, if you want to go about your day not worrying about anything, if you want to be happy all day, every day, this podcast is not for you. I'm sorry. I keep it real. I don't sell happy pills. I don't give you promises that I know I can't keep. I don't tell you things that I don't think are true. Many adopt philosophy because they think it will grant them serenity. And in some ways, it does grant serenity, but perhaps not in the way that you think it does. But people misinterpret it as having no cares in the world. Philosophy, that is. People interpret being a philosopher or having the right perspective as just having no cares in the world, not worrying about anything. Hakuna Matata. It means no worries. And that just isn't the case. It's really not the case. And so, following the best podcast intro ever, I'm going to talk about something that you probably should be doing. In fact, I'm going to take a leap here and say that you should be doing this. And I know my generation is millennials, and millennials don't like to impose their views on others. But guess what? If you think that you have a great way of thinking and you are telling other people about it, in a sense, you are suggesting it. You're saying, listen, this really worked for me. I think it's going to work for you. And if it worked for you, it's probably better than something else that you've tried that hasn't worked. Anyways, not to go down that rabbit hole. But the idea that I want to talk about today is meditating on hell. Hell. What do I mean by hell? I don't mean the Christian hell. I don't mean Dante's Inferno, although Dante's Inferno seems to be quite horrible. I don't mean the Muslim hell. I don't mean any other religious hell. What I mean is the most terrible life that you can possibly imagine. So let's do a mental exercise here. Close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. But anyways, we're going to do this mental exercise here together. Think about your bad habits. Think about your worst habits, your worst tendencies even. Maybe you have a tendency to show up late to work. You're not very punctual. Maybe you don't tell your family that you love them enough, and maybe you're distant sometimes. Maybe you're distant for a long time. Maybe you have a tendency not to exercise. Maybe you have a tendency to eat chips every night. You love pop. Maybe you have too many sodas per day. I want you to think about what your life will be like in 5 years, just 5 years, if you give in to all of those tendencies. So imagine all of the all of the habits that you do or the tendencies that you have that are not good for you, that you have to fight. Imagine what your life will be like in 5 years if you don't fight those tendencies. So let's go through the list again. Let's say you make a habit of showing up late every day. Every day at work, you're late. You never spend time with your family. You don't communicate properly. You stop exercising. You stop eating healthy. You stop caring what you eat. You just eat whatever. Who would you be? Who would you be as a person? And really, would you like that person? Is that who you want to be? Do you want to be that person? The person that is basically ignoring all of the self-help or all of the self-improvement that you know that you need to actually do. Another question that's really important to ask here as well is, because it's not just about you, how would others respond to that? How would people that you actually care about respond to that? So let's talk about the people in your life that are important. And we'll start with your boss, because your boss is sort of important in your life, right? Because he is in some ways responsible for your employment. So would your boss keep you employed if you kept showing up late? And maybe they would. Maybe, you're a really hard worker and you stay late. But that's not the point of this exercise. The point is, if you were the worst employee, if you gave in to all your bad tendencies, whatever your bad tendencies are, would your boss keep you around? Probably not, right? Would your coworkers like you? And maybe you don't care if they like you. I get it. But maybe they don't want to work with you. And guess what happens to people that people don't want to work with? They don't get hired. They don't stay employed. Or maybe they would keep you employed, but you'd be that guy in the corner that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to work with. I mean, they like to talk about you, but they don't want to work with you because, well, that person is useless. That person has shunned away from responsibility for far too long. That person has blamed other people far too long, and now they are someone that no one wants to work with. So your actions do affect other people around you. And so it's not so much of, do you want to be that person? And I hope you say no, you don't want to be that person. But it's also a matter of, specific to your job, are you going to be able to keep your job, for one? Do you want to be that person, for two? And I mean, specifically when it comes to your job, this is something that you do for a significant amount of your time. You spend a significant amount of your time at work, and so this should be something that you actually care about and you want to do. But the moral of the story is, if you give in to all your bad habits and your bad tendencies, is that who you want to be? And can you even be that person? Would you even be employed in 5 years? What about your relationships? Okay, well, your partner. Let's say you have a loving partner. Would your partner still be with you? If you stopped spending time with them, if you stopped telling them you love them, if you ignored them, if you turned into, and I'm not saying this is your worst self, you have to think about, and I'm sure you know, if you ask yourself the question, what are my natural tendencies? And I'm sure there's going to be things that come to mind that's like, okay, I'm not very good at doing this, and I have to work at doing that. If you give in to those tendencies, would your partner still be with you? Oh, but they love me unconditionally, you may say. Well, become the worst version of yourself and see if that's still true. I know this is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. Again, I don't sell happy pills. If you allow yourself to become the worst possible version of yourself, do you really think your partner is still going to love you, still going to care about you? And the more important question is, are you actually going to care about yourself? Are you actually going to love yourself if you are that person? So what's the worst version of your life in 5 years? Let's look at it. No job, or a job that is just horrible, deeply unsatisfying because no one likes you, and you know it. You know no one likes you, and you're bad at your job, and you know you're bad at your job, and everyone else knows that you're bad at your job, and you know it's your fault because for the last 5 years you've been consciously ignoring the idea of improving or the work required to improve. So your job sucks, or you have no job. You have no partner. You know, your partner left you because you're a horrible, let's be honest, you gave into your worst tendencies for 5 years. You're a horrible partner. You have no family because no one wants to spend time with you anymore. I mean, Jesus, who wants to spend time with the worst version of whoever you are? You're severely overweight. You have health problems because you're not exercising and you're eating poorly. Is that who you want to become? That is hell. That is real hell. Again, I'm not talking about the Christian hell. I'm not talking about any other form, Dante's Inferno. I'm talking about real life. Hell on earth. It exists. And people are there. And you could be there too in 5 years, in less time, if you completely give up and if you just give in to all your worst tendencies. So you're probably feeling a little upset right now, right? Well, good. Not that I want you to be upset, but what I do want you to do is I want you to realize and understand deeply that there is a potential future out there where you are in hell. You really need to understand that. This is a possibility. This is a potential future. And more importantly, it's not even hard to get to. Right? Because you might say to yourself, okay, well, I know people that are in hell, and I mean real world hell. They hate their lives. They're living horrible jobs. They're around horrible people that don't like them. I know people who are in hell, and they just made some really bad decisions in their life. It's like, well, No, that's not exactly how it works. I mean, I'm sure they've made some big bad decisions in their life, but that's not how people get to hell. People get to hell by ignoring all the little things. Like, I want you to realize how easy it is to have a horrible life. All you have to do is lay back and let life go on. All you have to do is not fight your natural tendencies. All you have to do is not try and strengthen your natural weaknesses, and life will take care of the rest, man. That's all you got to do. You just got to sit back and be your flawed self, and life will take care of the rest. Life will lead you directly into hell. It's so easy. Please understand that. It's so easy to find yourself in such a situation. I think it's Alice in Wonderland where there's that quote where she says, "In my kingdom, you have to sprint in place to stay in the same spot." And that's what life is like. If you just stand there, it's like a treadmill. It's just going to lead you all the way down to hell. You have to walk. You have to keep going. Because if you don't, that treadmill is going to lead you to hell. It's not hard. Getting to hell is easy. It's very, very easy. All you have to do is not go to the gym, not cook and eat healthy, order in cheap takeout every night, and bam, you're overweight in 5 years, probably less. Again, people think that they know people that have horrible lives. Wow, that guy made some bad decisions. Yeah, he did, but it wasn't these massive life-changing decisions that brought him to hell. It was all these little ones that kept adding up. These little things that he ignored, that he put off because they were difficult, because he didn't want to criticize himself. So don't think that if you start justifying some small bad decisions that they can't add up, that they can't lead you to hell. It's not in line with the facts. The fact is that, yes, you very well can be in hell in 5 years or less. I'm using 5 years as a completely arbitrary span of time. But 5 years is like a good, like you can ruin your life in 5 years, or you can make your life like the best life you could possibly live in 5 years. And that's something else that's worth understanding. And I'm not going to talk about that in too much depth, but 5 years is like a good window in which you can look into your future and have a reasonable idea of where you're going to be if you keep going down this path. And also, if you change your path, you have it's a reasonable amount of time for you to actually change your path for better or for worse. So you're feeling upset. You're all upset. Why? Why are you telling me about my horrible habits and how they're going to lead me to hell? Well, the whole purpose of this mentality is to steer you away from that hell. You see, fear can be useful, right, if it doesn't completely control your actions. We talk about how when you have an emotional response to something, you have to basically convert it into a logical response. And it's the same way, right? Because fear, for example, fear that you are going to go to hell, that is a fear. That is an emotional response. Now, you can't use that fear in a way to act irrationally. What you have to do is let that motivate you into acting rationally. It's like the Stoic practice of just letting the emotions wash over to you. Question why you are feeling that way. And the reason why you're feeling that way, the reason why you're scared is because you know it's true, because you know that you can have a horrible life in 5 years if you just sit back and be yourself. What about a more local scale? Let's look at this. So we've looked at the bigger picture, right? Like life-changing, 5 years down the road, you're going to have a horrible life kind of scale. But what about at the smaller picture, at the smaller picture, at the local scale? For example, let's say you have a work project coming up, right? One of the best things you can do if you have something coming up, doesn't have to be a work project, it can be anything, any project in life. One of the best things that you can do is sit down and visualize every possible thing that could go wrong. Now, in doing so, you are preparing yourself for those things, right? And if they do go wrong, and it's likely at least something will go wrong, again, we live in a flawed reality, you're not going to be surprised because you've already dealt with it in your head. And it's very helpful to actually write this out. I mean, a lot of engineering companies do this. A lot of companies do this. It's called a risk register. And what they do is you sit down and you say, okay, what are all the risks to this? What are the potential things that could go wrong? And if they do go wrong, what's a good response? You see, this whole idea that a lot of people have about philosophy and about Stoicism and all these ideas in terms of how to best live, they think that you just live a carefree life and you never worry about anything. It's not exactly true. But what you're doing is you are premeditating on those things so that when they actually happen, you are prepared for it. And you want to be prepared for it. You want to deal with it properly. If you never even consider if anything can possibly go wrong, I'll deal with it when it comes. Okay, think about that mentality for a second. So you're going on a boat trip with your family, and you're not thinking about anything that could possibly go wrong. The obvious being that the boat sinks. Well, guess what? Let's just go out in the boat. Come on, don't even worry about it. Nothing's going to go wrong. Then what happens? And the boat sinks. You didn't pack the life jackets because you didn't think anything could go wrong. So now you have a family with the boat sinking and no life jackets. If you would have premeditated on what could possibly go wrong, you'd think to yourself, oh, I should bring some life jackets. Oh, I should bring a bail so I can get the water out of the boat if it starts leaking. That is wise. That's wisdom. This really is the same. This whole idea I'm talking about here on the global scale, but also on the more local scale, such as projects, this is really known as Premeditatio Malorum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm trying to sound fancy here. It's Latin. But basically what it translates as is premeditation of evils. It's really the whole thing I'm talking about here. That's sort of the Stoic way of saying it, right? But as I mentioned, there's very real-world practical applications of this. And, you know, you wouldn't say in a business meeting where you're talking about the potential risks to a project, okay, we're doing Premeditatio Malorum. It's like, no, you wouldn't say that. But this is what the ancient Stoics would have said and what the ancient Stoics would have called it. Premeditation of evils. Consider everything that could possibly go wrong so that when it goes wrong, you can be prepared for it. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for, oh, I'm not going to worry about the future and I'm just going to focus on the present moment. It's like bullshit. You're going to end up dead very soon. You're going to end up in hell, literally. Going to end here with a quote from Seneca, or Seneca. But I like Seneca now. I change the pronunciation every other day. Anyways, and I quote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. Rehearse them in your mind. Exile, torture, war, shipwreck. All the terms of our human lot should be before our eyes." End quote. We should project our thoughts ahead of us. I've spoken about this in the past, how it's very helpful throughout your day to live in the moment, and I encourage people to live in the moment. But you can't live in the moment every single moment of your life. That's not how it works. You have to project. You have to premeditate on the things that could possibly go wrong so that you are able to actually prepare for it and so that you can sacrifice properly for the future and you can do the right things today to make tomorrow better. That's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks so much for listening. I hope it was a meaningful episode for you. So, you like my podcast, you want to support me, there's lots of ways you can support me. The best way is to share this episode with a friend, share the podcast, like the podcast, subscribe, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias, YouTube. If you really want to support me, I am getting my Patreon up to date, which for just $5 a month, you can get some great content on there. Basically just a preview of the material that's coming up. It's definitely not expected, but it is appreciated. Best way you can support this podcast, though, is to share this with a friend and discuss it. Discuss it with me, discuss it with others. Thanks again. All the best. Until next time.